The blood-stained letter trembled in Piper Whitfield's hands as she read the news that her husband of only 6 months had been killed in a mining accident, leaving her alone on the edge of the untamed frontier with nothing but debts and broken dreams. The year was 1876, and the Colorado Territory was unforgiving to those without strength or means, especially a woman with neither family nor fortune to her name. Your husband owed substantial funds, the banker, Mr. Holloway, explained the following day, his spectacles perched on his bulbous nose as he shuffled papers across his desk. I'm afraid the cabin and land must be sold to satisfy his creditors. Piper stood tall despite the weight crushing her chest. At 24, she had already endured more than most orphaned at 16. Working as a schoolteacher in Boston before marrying Thomas, who had promised her a life of adventure in the West. Now she faced destitution in a town where whispers followed her every move. I need time, she said, her voice steadier than her heart. Just a month to figure something out. A month it is, then, Holloway conceded, though his eyes held no compassion. But not a day more, Mrs. Whitfield. Outside the bank, Piper pulled her shawl tighter against the autumn chill. Silver Creek was a small settlement, dusty and growing, but with the hard edges typical of frontier towns. As she walked down the main street, she noticed the stares, heard the whispers. Poor broken thing. Never should have come out west. Won't last the winter. They called her broken, and perhaps she was, but Piper refused to let them see it. With her chin held high, she made her way back to the small cabin Thomas had built with more enthusiasm than skill. The roof leaked in 3 places, and the door hung crookedly on misaligned hinges. It wasn't much, but it was all she had left. As evening approached, bringing with it a punishing rainstorm, Piper discovered yet another leak above her bed. She placed a pot to catch the water and sat at the small table, reviewing her meager options by lamplight. She could return east, but with what money? She could seek employment in town, but most respectable positions were closed to a woman alone. The less respectable ones she refused to consider. A thunderous knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Opening it cautiously, Piper found herself face to face with a tall man, soaked to the skin, his hat dripping water onto her threshold. "Evening, madam," he said, his voice deep and roughened by the elements. "Name's Zachary Dawson. I own the ranch north of your property. Saw your light and wanted to check if you're managing in this storm." Piper regarded him warily. She'd heard of the Rocking D Ranch but had never met its owner. Thomas had mentioned him once or twice, a taciturn man who kept to himself, with a reputation for fair dealings. "I'm managing just fine, Mr. Dawson," she replied, though at that precise moment, another leak sprung near the fireplace, sending water splashing onto the floor. A slight smile cracked through his weathered face. "So I see." Zachary Dawson was not what she'd expected. Despite his imposing height and broad shoulders, there was a gentleness in his storm-gray eyes that belied his rugged appearance. His dark hair, wet from the rain, curled against his neck, and his jaw was shadowed with several days' growth of beard. "I heard about your husband," he said. "My condolences." "Thank you," Piper replied stiffly. Condolences wouldn't pay her debts or fix her roof. "I also heard Holloway's giving you a month before taking the property." Piper's spine stiffened. "News travels fast in Silver Creek. It's a small town." He removed his hat, seemingly uncomfortable. "I came to make you an offer. I need help at my ranch house. My housekeeper left to care for her ailing mother back east. I need someone to cook, clean, and keep things in order. The pay is fair, and you'd have a proper roof over your head." Pride warred with practicality in Piper's mind. "You're offering me a position as your housekeeper?" "Yes, madam." "Nothing improper. I've got a separate cabin for you, dry and sound. You can even bring your things from here." He glanced at the leaking roof. "Though I'd suggest leaving that pot right where it is." Despite herself, Piper felt a smile tugging at her lips. "Why would you help me, Mr. Dawson?" "You don't even know me." "I knew Thomas," he said simply. "Not well, but enough to know he was a good man with big dreams and not enough experience. What happened to him wasn't right. Neither is leaving his widow to fend for herself." He paused. "And I really do need a housekeeper." Piper considered the offer. Working as a housekeeper wasn't what she'd envisioned for her life, but it was honest work, and she needed time to form a long-term plan. "I accept your offer, Mr. Dawson. When shall I start?" "Tomorrow, if that suits you. I'll send my wagon in the morning." He placed his hat back on his head. The storm should break by then. As he turned to leave, Piper called after him. "Mr. Dawson, thank you." He nodded once, then disappeared into the rain-soaked night. True to his word, Zachary sent a wagon the next morning. The driver, an older man who introduced himself as Silas, helped Piper load her few belongings. "Boss is a good man," Silas told her as they traveled the 5 miles to the rocking D. "Keeps to himself mostly, but fair to a fault." The ranch sprawled across rolling hills, larger than Piper had imagined. The main house stood tall and sturdy against the backdrop of distant mountains, a 2-story structure built of solid timber with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Unlike her cabin, it had been constructed with skill and care. "Mr. Dawson built this himself?" she asked, impressed despite herself. "Every nail and board," Silas confirmed. "Took him 3 years, working between cattle drives and ranch duties." Zachary met them on the porch, looking different in daylight, less intimidating but no less imposing. Clean-shaven now, with his dark hair combed back, he wore a simple flannel shirt and denim pants rather than the rain-soaked slicker of the previous night. "Welcome to the rocking D, Mrs. Whitfield," he said, helping her down from the wagon. "I hope you'll find it satisfactory." The interior of the house surprised Piper. While the structure itself was sound, the inside reflected a bachelor's minimal attention to comfort. Functional furniture sat where needed, but there were no decorative touches, no signs of a woman's hand in creating a home. "Your quarters are through here." Zachary led her to a small but comfortable room off the kitchen. "The cabin I mentioned isn't quite ready yet. Winter repairs needed. You can stay here until then." The room contained a bed with a quilt, a small dresser, and a washstand. Simple, but clean and dry, a significant improvement over her leaking cabin. "Your duties will include cooking, cleaning, and general household management," he explained. "I take breakfast at dawn, dinner at noon, and supper at sundown. I don't expect fancy meals, just honest food. The ranch hands eat in the bunkhouse, so you'll only be cooking for me unless we have visitors, which is rare." "I understand," Piper said, already mentally cataloging what needed to be done. The kitchen, while well-equipped, showed signs of neglect. Dust had accumulated in corners, and the organization of supplies seemed haphazard at best. "You'll have Sundays to yourself," Zachary continued. "And I'll provide transportation if you wish to attend church in town." "That's very considerate." An awkward silence fell between them. Zachary shifted his weight from one foot to another. "Well, I'll leave you to settle in. I'll be working with the cattle today. If you need anything, Silas can help." After he left, Piper sat on the edge of the bed, allowing herself a moment of relief. She had employment, shelter, and time to figure out her next steps. It wasn't ideal, but it was far better than the alternative. She spent that first day exploring the house and taking inventory. The pantry was well stocked but poorly organized. She found 3 different open bags of flour and coffee beans mixed with dried beans. By evening, She had reorganized the kitchen and prepared a simple but hearty meal of beef stew and fresh bread. Zachary returned at sunset, washing up at the pump outside before entering through the kitchen door. He paused, taking in the transformation of his kitchen and the aroma of home cooking. "Something smells good," he said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. "Beef stew," Piper replied, ladling the thick mixture into a bowl. "And there's fresh bread." They ate in relative silence, Zachary seeming unsure how to make conversation and Piper too tired after her long day of work to try. But as he finished his second helping, he looked up at her with genuine appreciation. "That was the best meal I've had in this house," he said. "Thank you. You're welcome." Piper felt a small glow of satisfaction, though I should warn you that I'm still learning my way around cooking. "I was a schoolteacher back east, not a chef." "A schoolteacher." Interest flickered in his eyes. "What subjects did you teach?" "Reading, writing, arithmetic, history, a bit of everything. I had students aged 6 to 14 in one classroom." "Impressive." He seemed genuinely intrigued. "We could use a proper school in Silver Creek. Right now, the children get sporadic lessons from the minister's wife when she has time." "That's unfortunate," Piper said, thinking of the children growing up without consistent education. "Every child deserves access to learning." Zachary nodded in agreement, then rose from the table. "I have some accounts to review. Thank you again for the meal." In the days that followed, Piper settled into a routine. She rose before dawn to prepare breakfast, spent her mornings cleaning and organizing the house, and afternoons baking or mending. The work was harder than teaching had been, but there was satisfaction in seeing immediate results: a clean room, a good meal, a house slowly becoming a home. Zachary was an undemanding employer. He spent most daylight hours working on the ranch, returning only for meals. Their conversations remained polite but limited, though Piper noticed he seemed to linger longer at the table with each passing day. A week after her arrival, a fierce storm swept through the valley. Rain pounded against the windows and wind howled around the eaves, but the house stood solid and dry. As lightning illuminated the sky, Piper thought of her former cabin and said a silent prayer of gratitude. She was in the sitting room, mending one of Zachary's shirts by lamplight when he entered with an armful of firewood. "Thought we might need a fire tonight," he said, kneeling by the fireplace to arrange the logs. "That would be nice." Piper set aside her mending. "Would you like some coffee?" "Please." When she returned with 2 steaming cups, Zachary had built a cheerful blaze that pushed back the chill and filled the room with dancing shadows. "Silas tells me you've been reorganizing the house," he said as she handed him his coffee. "I hope you don't mind. It needed some attention." "Not at all. It's your domain now." He took a sip of coffee. "I never much cared about those things, but I can see the difference." Piper settled into a chair opposite him. "May I ask you something, Mr. Dawson? You can call me Zachary, you know, or Zach." "Mr. Dawson makes me feel like I'm in trouble." This drew a small smile from her. "Very well, Zachary. How did you come to have this ranch? It's quite substantial for someone so young," he supplied. "I'm 32, though I suppose the elements age a man out here." "I was going to say on your own," Piper clarified. "Ah." He stared into the fire. "I came west when I was 18, worked as a ranch hand, then a foreman, saved every penny. When this land became available 10 years ago, I took a chance. It was nothing then, just open grassland. Built it up year by year." "That's impressive," Piper said, genuinely admiring his accomplishment. "What about you?" he asked. "How did a Boston schoolteacher end up in Colorado territory?" Piper's fingers tightened around her cup. "I was orphaned at 16. I had an aunt who took me in, paid for me to get my teaching certificate. When she passed, I had my profession but little else." She paused, memories flooding back. I met Thomas at a church social. He was visiting Boston, full of stories about the West and dreams of striking it rich. He painted such a vivid picture of our future here. And then reality didn't match the dream, Zachary said quietly. No, Piper blinked back unexpected tears. He tried, though, he truly did. The mine collapsed just as they were reaching a promising vein. I'm sorry. So am I. She composed herself. But dwelling on it won't change anything. Zachary studied her with those storm-gray eyes. They call you broken in town. Piper's head snapped up. I'm aware. They're wrong. His voice was firm. I've seen broken people. You're bent maybe, but not broken. There's steel in you. The unexpected compliment warmed her more than the fire. Thank you. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the rain and the crackling fire. For the first time since Thomas's death, Piper felt a moment of peace. The following Sunday, true to his word, Zachary provided a buggy for Piper to attend church in Silver Creek. She dressed in her best dress, a navy blue cotton with white trim that had seen better days but was still presentable. I'll accompany you, Zachary announced as she prepared to leave. He had shaved closely and wore a clean shirt and his least worn pants. Seeing her surprise, he added, It's been a while since I attended services. Figured it might be time. The small church was nearly full when they arrived. Piper felt the stares and heard the whispers as they entered. Zachary, seemingly oblivious or perhaps deliberately ignoring them, guided her to a pew near the back. Reverend Harrison preached on perseverance through trials, a message that resonated with Piper's current circumstances. Throughout the service, she was acutely aware of Zachary beside her, his deep voice joining in the hymns, his solid presence somehow reassuring. After the service, several women approached Piper, curiosity evident in their expressions. Mrs. Whitfield, how nice to see you, said Mrs. Palmer, the general store owner's wife. We heard you were working for Mr. Dawson now. The question behind the statement was clear. Before Piper could respond, Zachary appeared at her side. Mrs. Whitfield has been kind enough to bring some order to my chaos, he said pleasantly. I'm fortunate she accepted the position. His presence seemed to discourage further prying questions, and the women soon drifted away, though not without meaningful glances between them. Thank you, Piper said quietly as they walked to the buggy. For what? For making it clear my position is respectable. Zachary helped her into the buggy. It is respectable. Besides, what you do is your business, not theirs. As they drove back to the ranch, Piper watched the landscape roll by, the vast open spaces that had once seemed so frightening now becoming familiar. The rocking D came into view, the house standing tall against the blue sky. It truly is beautiful, she said. Your ranch. You've built something remarkable here. Zachary's expression softened. It's been my life for 10 years. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth the sacrifice. What sacrifice? A normal life. Family. The things most men my age have. There's still time, Piper said, then immediately felt her cheeks warm at the implication. If Zachary noticed her embarrassment, he didn't comment on it. Instead, he said, perhaps. Though finding a woman willing to take on frontier life isn't easy. It's hard country, especially for someone not raised to it. The words hit close to home, reminding Piper of her own struggles to adapt. Some of us learn to adjust, she said softly. Yes, he agreed, his eyes meeting hers briefly. Some do. As autumn deepened toward winter, the rhythm of life at the rocking D settled into something comforting. The promised cabin repairs were completed, but Zachary never mentioned moving Piper there, and she didn't bring it up. Her room off the kitchen had become a sanctuary of sorts, and the main house increasingly reflected her presence. Curtains at the windows, wildflowers in mason jars, and small touches that transformed the bachelor's quarters into a proper home. Their evening conversations by the fire became a regular occurrence. Piper learned that Zachary had a younger sister in St. Louis whom he hadn't seen in years, but corresponded with regularly. He discovered her passion for books and began bringing her volumes from his modest library, which had been gathering dust in his study. One evening in late November, as the first snow dusted the ground, Zachary returned from town with a large package. "What's this?" Piper asked as he placed it on the kitchen table. "Open it and see." Inside, she found a beautiful winter coat of dark blue wool, far finer than anything she'd owned before. "Zachary, I can't accept this," she protested, even as her fingers caressed the soft fabric. "You can and you will," he said firmly. "Colorado winters are brutal. Your shawl won't suffice." "It's too expensive. Consider it a necessary expense for my housekeeper's health." His expression brooked no argument. "I need you well, Piper." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips silenced her protests. "Thank you," she said finally, holding the coat against herself. "It's beautiful. Try it on," he urged. Piper slipped into the coat, which fit perfectly. "How did you know my size?" A slight flush colored his cheeks. "I may have asked Mrs. Palmer for assistance." The thought of Zachary in the general store, consulting with Mrs. Palmer about women's coats, brought a warm smile to Piper's face. "It's perfect, thank you." That night, after Zachary had retired to his room, Piper sat on her bed, running her hands over the coat again. The gesture was more than practical, it was thoughtful, considerate. When was the last time someone had considered her needs so carefully? Thomas had been kind but careless, always more focused on his dreams than present realities. Zachary was different, solid, dependable, grounded in practicality yet capable of surprising gentleness. She was beginning to see in him qualities that she'd never fully appreciated before: strength without harshness, ambition tempered by wisdom, and a profound sense of responsibility. These realizations unsettled her. She was his housekeeper, nothing more. Any other feelings would be inappropriate and unwelcome. Yet as snow began to fall more heavily outside her window, Piper couldn't deny the warmth that thoughts of Zachary Dawson brought to her heart. December arrived with a vengeance, bringing with it a blizzard that kept them housebound for 3 days. Zachary had prepared well for winter, ensuring the livestock had shelter, and that the house was well stocked with supplies and firewood. While the wind howled outside, they found themselves confined together indoors, leading to longer conversations and new discoveries. Piper learned that Zachary had a deep interest in history and politics, subscribing to newspapers from Denver and even St. Louis to stay informed. He discovered her talent for storytelling, cultivated during her teaching days, and encouraged her to share tales by the fireside in the evenings. On the third night of the blizzard, as they sat before the fire drinking hot cider, Zachary asked a question that caught Piper off guard. "Do you miss teaching?" She considered this. "Yes, very much. I miss the children, their curiosity, watching them grasp new concepts. There's nothing quite like seeing a child read their first full sentence." "You light up when you talk about it," he observed. "It's clearly your calling." "Perhaps it was," she said wistfully. "But that life is behind me now." "Why?" Piper looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean? Why must it be behind you? Silver Creek needs a teacher. The town is growing. More families arrive each month." "Zachary, I'm a widow working as a housekeeper. The town council would never consider me for such a position." "Don't be so certain." Something in his expression suggested he knew more than he was saying. "The current arrangement with the minister's wife is failing. Several parents have complained. The subject came up at the last town meeting." Hope fluttered in Piper's chest before she tamped it down. "Even if that's true, I have obligations here, to you. You've more than repaid any debt between us, Piper." His voice was gentle. "You've transformed this house into a home, something I failed to do in all my years here. Are you? Are you saying you no longer need my services?" The thought brought an unexpected pang of loss. "No," he said quickly. "That's not what I meant. I'm saying that if teaching is what would make you happy, I wouldn't stand in your way." The statement hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Piper studied his face in the firelight, the strong jaw, the kind eyes that had become so familiar to her. "And if staying here is what would make me happy." The words slipped out before she could consider their implications. Zachary's gaze intensified. "Then I would be very glad of it." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility, until a log collapsed in the fire, sending up a shower of sparks. The spell broken, Piper stood abruptly. "It's getting late. I should retire." "Of course." Zachary rose as well. "Good night, Piper. Good night, Zachary." In her room, Piper sat on the edge of her bed, heart pounding. What was happening between them? And more importantly, what did she want to happen? The memory of Thomas was still present, but the sharp pain of his loss had dulled to a gentle ache. Was it disloyal to feel these stirrings for another man outside? The blizzard raged on, but within her heart, something warm and hopeful was beginning to bloom. The storm finally broke on the fourth day, leaving behind a pristine white landscape. Zachary spent most of the day checking on the cattle and repairing minor damage to the outbuildings. When he returned, exhausted but satisfied that all was well, Piper had prepared a special meal, roast beef with all the trimmings and an apple pie for dessert. "What's the occasion?" he asked, surprised by the effort. "A celebration of surviving the blizzard," Piper replied with a smile. "And a thank you for what? For everything. The coat, the shelter, the kindness," she paused, "for making me feel less broken." Zachary's expression softened. "You were never broken, Piper. Wounded, perhaps, but never broken." They ate dinner with a new awareness between them, each glance holding more meaning, each casual touch passing the salt, reaching for the bread, sending ripples of awareness through Piper. After dinner, as they sat by the fire, Zachary seemed to be gathering his courage for something. Finally, he spoke. "There's a Christmas social in town next week. Would you consider attending with me?" Piper looked up in surprise. "As your housekeeper?" "No," his voice was firm. "As my guest." "My companion." The implications were clear. This would be a public statement about their relationship, or at least the beginning of one. Silver Creek would take note. "Are you certain?" Piper asked. "People will talk." "Let them." Zachary leaned forward. "Piper, I've spent 10 years building this ranch, focusing on nothing else. Since you arrived, I've realized there's more to life than land and cattle. You've brought light back into this house and into my life." Piper's heart thundered in her chest. "Zachary, you don't need to answer now," he said quickly. "I know it's soon after Thomas. I know your position here complicates things, but I wanted you to know that my feelings for you go beyond employer and employee." Tears sprang to Piper's eyes, not of sadness, but of a complex mixture of emotions she couldn't fully name. "I would be honored to attend the social with you," she said softly. His face broke into a rare, full smile that transformed his features. "Thank you." The week leading up to the Christmas social was charged with anticipation. Piper spent hours preparing her best dress, adding fresh lace to the collar and cuffs to give it new life. Zachary seemed equally concerned with his appearance, actually riding to town midweek to visit the barber. The night of the social arrived clear and cold, stars brilliant in the dark sky. Zachary drove them to town in his best buggy, Piper wrapped snugly in her blue coat, a warm brick at her feet. The town hall had been transformed with evergreen boughs, red ribbons, and candles. A fiddler played lively tunes, and tables groaned under the weight of food brought by the townspeople. When Piper and Zachary entered together, there was a momentary lull in conversation before the buzz resumed, now undoubtedly focused on the new arrivals. "Ignore them," Zachary murmured, his hand warm at the small of her back. "Would you care to dance?" Dancing with Zachary proved to be a revelation. For such a big man, he moved with surprising grace. As they circled the floor, Piper became aware of nothing but him, his hand at her waist, his eyes never leaving her face, the slight smile that seemed reserved just for her. "You're a wonderful dancer," she said, a little breathless. "My mother insisted I learn," he replied. "Said no woman would have me if I couldn't manage a simple waltz. She was a wise woman, she was." His expression grew nostalgic. "She would have liked you very much." The evening passed in a whirl of dancing, conversation, and an increasing sense that something profound had shifted between them. The whispers and stares of the townspeople faded into insignificance. Even Mrs. Palmer, town gossip extraordinaire, seemed charmed when Zachary respectfully introduced Piper as "my friend, Mrs. Whitfield." As they were preparing to leave, Reverend Harrison approached them. "Mrs. Whitfield, Mr. Dawson," he greeted them warmly. "Wonderful to see you both enjoying the festivities." "Thank you, Reverend," Piper replied. "Mrs. Whitfield, I understand you were a teacher back east." Piper glanced at Zachary, who maintained an innocent expression. "Yes, for several years. I wonder if you might call on me next week." "The town council is considering establishing a proper school, and we're in need of someone with experience." Joy surged through Piper. "I would be delighted to discuss it with you." "Excellent. Shall we say Tuesday at 2? After the Reverend moved on, Piper turned to Zachary with narrowed eyes. "Did you have something to do with this?" "I may have mentioned your qualifications to a few people," he admitted. "But the need is genuine, and you're genuinely qualified. The rest is between you and the council." On the drive home, with the moon illuminating the snow-covered landscape, Piper felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in a very long time. When Zachary helped her down from the buggy, his hands lingered at her waist. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," he said, his voice low. "Thank you for inviting me," she replied, suddenly shy. They stood close in the cold night air, breath forming clouds between them. Slowly, giving her every chance to step away, Zachary leaned down. His lips met hers in a gentle kiss that promised more rather than demanded it. Piper's hands came to rest on his chest as she returned the kiss, her heart racing. When they separated, Zachary brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm falling in love with you, Piper Whitfield," he said simply. "I thought you should know that." Words failed her, but she rose on her tiptoes to kiss him again, hoping her actions would convey what she couldn't yet say aloud. The days that followed were filled with both excitement and uncertainty. Piper met with the town council about the teaching position and was offered the job for the spring term. The school would be small at first, just a single room with perhaps 20 students of varying ages, but it was a start. "I accepted," she told Zachary over dinner that evening. "They're offering $10 a month, plus a small room behind the schoolhouse where I can live." Zachary's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Live. You're planning to move into town." "I assumed I would have to," Piper said, suddenly uncertain. "The position of teacher comes with certain expectations of propriety." "Of course." Zachary set down his fork. "I hadn't considered that aspect." An uncomfortable silence fell between them. Finally, Piper said, "I don't start until March." "That gives us time to find a suitable replacement for me here." "I don't want a replacement, Piper." Zachary's voice was rough with emotion. I want you." The directness of his statement stole her breath. "Zachary, I know it's soon. I know there are complications. But I can't pretend I don't feel what I feel." He reached across the table for her hand. "I love you. I want a life with you, not as my housekeeper, but as my wife." Piper's heart soared even as caution held her back. "Are you certain? We've known each other such a short time." "I've known you long enough to see your strength, your kindness, your determination. I've watched you rebuild your life from the ashes of loss. I've seen how you've transformed not just this house, but me as well." His grip tightened on her hand. "I don't need more time to know that I want to spend my life with you." Tears filled Piper's eyes. "I care for you deeply, Zachary, more than I thought possible after Thomas, but marriage, that's a significant step." "It is," he agreed, "and I'll wait as long as you need. But I wanted you to know where I stand, and that there are other options besides you moving to town." That night, in the privacy of her room, Piper confronted her feelings honestly. She had come to love Zachary Dawson, his steadfastness, his quiet strength, the way he looked at her as though she were the most precious thing in his world. The guilt she had expected to feel at loving another man after Thomas hadn't materialized. Instead, there was only gratitude for this unexpected second chance at happiness. Yet practical matters remained. If she accepted his proposal, would the town council still want her as their teacher? Would they see her as respectable enough? And was she ready to commit her heart again so soon? The answer came to her on Christmas morning. Zachary had insisted they exchange gifts, though Piper had little to offer beyond a hand-knitted scarf she had worked on in secret during the evenings. His gift to her, however, left her speechless, a beautiful leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. "I thought you might use it to record your thoughts, or perhaps develop lessons for your students," he explained as she ran her fingers over the supple leather. "It's perfect," she whispered, deeply touched by his thoughtfulness. "There's something else." Zachary reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. Opening it revealed a delicate gold ring with a single pearl. "This was my mother's. I've kept it all these years waiting for the right person." He didn't propose again, merely presented the ring as a symbol of his feelings and his intentions. "No pressure," he assured her. "Just a promise that whenever you're ready, I'll be here." Piper stared at the ring, then at the man before her, this strong, patient man who had helped her rebuild her life and her sense of self. In that moment, clarity washed over her. The past could not be changed, but the future was hers to shape. "Ask me," she said softly. Confusion crossed his face. "Ask you what?" "Ask me to marry you, properly." Understanding dawned in his eyes. Taking the ring from the box, he knelt before her. "Piper Whitfield, you brought light into my life when I didn't even realize how dark it had become. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she said through happy tears. "Yes, I will." The ring slipped onto her finger as if it had been made for her. When Zachary rose and gathered her into his arms, Piper felt as though she had finally found her true home. They were married on New Year's Day, 1877, in the Silver Creek Church with Reverend Harrison officiating. The town turned out in force, curiosity overcoming any lingering disapproval. Silas stood as Zachary's best man, beaming with pride as though he had personally arranged the match. The town council, after some deliberation, agreed that Mrs. Zachary Dawson would make a perfectly respectable teacher, especially given her husband's standing in the community. The school would open as planned in March, with Piper teaching 3 days a week, riding to and from town on a gentle mare that was Zachary's wedding gift to her. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came new beginnings. The rocking D flourished under their joint care. Piper's school grew from 20 students to 30 by the end of the first term. The house that Zachary had built with such care became truly a home, filled with books, music, and laughter. As summer approached, Piper discovered she was expecting their first child. When she shared the news with Zachary, his joy was boundless. He lifted her in his arms, spinning her around the kitchen before setting her down with sudden concern for her condition. "Are you happy?" he asked, his hands gently cradling her face. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she assured him, placing her hand over his. "You've given me a new life, Zachary, a home, a purpose, a future." "You've given me the same," he said. "This house stood for years, but it was never truly a home until you came. Your strength, your grace in the face of adversity, you've taught me what really matters." That evening, they stood together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Zachary's arm wrapped protectively around Piper's still flat stomach as they contemplated the future they would build together. "They called me broken," Piper mused, leaning against her husband's solid strength. "But I was never truly broken, was I?" "Bent, not broken," Zachary reminded her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Strong enough to weather the storm and emerge even stronger." And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Piper Whitfield Dawson knew that the hardships she had endured had led her exactly where she was meant to be, to this house that stood tall against the elements, to this man who saw her strength rather than her wounds, and to a love that had healed them both. The following years brought more joy than either of them had dared to hope for. Their first child, a daughter they named Hannah, arrived in the winter of 1877, a beautiful, strong, lunged baby with her father's storm-gray eyes and her mother's determination. 2 years later, they welcomed a son, Michael, followed by another daughter, Elizabeth, in 1881. The rocking D prospered under their joint stewardship. Zachary's cattle business expanded, while Piper's school became the pride of Silver Creek. They added a new wing to the house to accommodate their growing family, and Zachary built a proper schoolroom on the property where Piper could teach during the harsh winter months when travel to town became difficult. In the summer of 1882, as they celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary, Zachary surprised Piper with a special gift, the deed to her old cabin and the surrounding land, which he had purchased years ago but kept in trust. "I thought our children might want to know where their mother's Colorado story began," he explained as they walked the property together. "Maybe someday we'll rebuild it, make it a proper place again." Piper surveyed the dilapidated structure, now listing badly to one side. "I was so afraid here," she recalled, "so uncertain of my future. And look at you now," Zachary said with pride. "Teacher, mother, rancher's wife, the heart of our home and the strength of our family. Our house stands tall because we built it together," Piper said, slipping her hand into his. "With love, with patience, with grace." As they walked back toward their home, where their children waited under Silas's watchful eye, Piper reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From broken widow to beloved wife and mother, from frightened outsider to respected community member, the transformation seemed almost miraculous. Yet it wasn't a miracle that had saved her, but the everyday grace of a good man who had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself, and her own resilience that had refused to be defeated by circumstance. They called her broken once, those who didn't know better. But Piper Whitfield Dawson knew the truth that sometimes being broken open is the only way to let the light in, and that with sufficient grace, even the deepest wounds can become the foundation upon which the strongest houses are built.